We had known there was a cult out there, just didn't know where exactly. I had went there seeking knowledge. I wanted to meet with these sorcerers. The locals had swore they were out there for generations. After days of searching, I'd known I'd stumbled onto their territory because I came face to face with this cloaked man. It got really intense. He'd said, why have you come here? I said, I've just been confused by my world. Like, I want the knowledge you have, which I shouldn't have said, because he lifted his hand up in this particular way. I felt gravity in my chest as I'd been lifted in unison with the motion of his hand. And I am lifted 20 feet off the ground as he like telepathically holds me there with this G-force. And he said to me, who sent you here? I'm like, nobody, I swear. I said, I live with the locals, please. He drops me, I fall to the ground, and he goes, come with me. He walks me into this cave network. I'm just seeing more of these cloaked people. There was like an entire society of them down here, and he just kind of looks at me like he's almost reading me or something, and he goes, we aren't supposed to talk to outsiders. You wish to know things that would break the boundaries of your reality. He goes, but I can sense your desperation. I'd said back to him, my whole life I've always felt out of place. I felt off, confused, like I could sense things others couldn't. Like I'd seen through veils others didn't know existed, and I've spent my life seeking what I can feel but never seem to touch. He's looking back at me and he'd said, your words incite hope, but my brother, if you seek refuge, I'm afraid you would never be able to return back to your homeland. And as much as that felt like a gut punch, I said back to him, sir, I know this may sound strange, but I have never felt more at home than I do now. He'd said, well, firstly, take off that timepiece on your wrist. You won't be needing that. And as I just kind of said, sir, wait, what the actual hell are you talking about? And then he just started like really eerily laughing, like really strange. And I just go, oh, well, what the hell is so funny to you? And he'd said, oh, you poor soul, confused and trapped in petty sorceries that control your mind. I said, you don't know how to tell time? He goes, I envy your ignorance. We created time, a mere numerological web of deceit. Good way to keep a man bound to a routine. What is it to you? A Monday? As he's laughing, he goes, a Tuesday. And I'm going, what are you talking about, man? You're crazy. He just goes, you really think your petty concept of time holds any merit in the universe, brother? Counting your imaginary days of the week, your imaginary months. The sun and moon transfer cycles of light to darkness. Time is a figment of your mind, which you just decide to start keeping arbitrary count of, deciding all sorts of baseless metrics to entertain yourself in your little circus of time, to avoid the simple fact that you are right here in this moment. There are no days, months, or years, brother, but simply the breath of life. You sure I'm the crazy one? And I just go, look, man, if we're so dumb, if we're so confused, then how do you explain this? And I just pulled out my iPhone to just show him like we're advanced, you know? And he just laughed and said, oh, Somnus always was a trickster. And I'd said back to him, Somnus, what are you talking about? Who is Somnus? I'm like, this is just a smartphone, man. And he'd said, oh, my friend, believe half of what you see and none of which you hear. And I'm just like, what, like who's Somnus? He'd said, well, brother, he's the one who controls your world. As he'd raised his hand up kind of up to my head, he'd sent some kind of informational energetic pulse at me as he'd said, let me show you. And all of these just ancient stories were like translated into my cranium. From what I gathered, these sorcerers had all lived in harmony back at the dawn of time. They were such a mystical breed of man meant to govern the order of nature, uphold balance, and they lived in harmony amongst the planet and its creatures for thousands of years, until there was this young sorcerer named Somnus. He'd always been defiant and mischievous. He was reprimanded by the council when he was a teenager for using his magic to play devious tricks on humans.
The council, what's the council?
The council is essentially the hierarchy of order amongst the sorcerers, and they maintain governance over the ancient scriptures and facilitate the education amongst the younger sorcerers. Essentially, they make sure the sorcerers are taught safe magic, and the really like dangerous manipulative understandings were basically kept inside these relics and stored in a chamber protected by the Grand Sorcerer. And so one day, long after they had believed to have rehabilitated Somnus from his disturbing acts in his youth, there were a couple of elders who had noticed some strange things going on through their remote viewing terraspheres. They had seen these large hordes of humans acting in a strange kind of unnaturally serving fashion, and the elders were calling upon the High Council for a meeting. They had believed there to be a great disturbance in the balance, and they wanted to discuss the possible misuses of magic. Upon the meeting, the council had grown very concerned as they'd noticed the Grand Sorcerer was not present, and a few of the elders on intuition had rushed to the chamber of the ancient relics. Once they'd gotten there, they'd found the Grand Sorcerer Shamasust.
What's happening to you? What's wrong with your speech?
It's Somnus. He doesn't want these things being spoken of. He is trying to silence me with his magic, but I'm strong enough to fight it. Just let me finish the story. The Grand Sorcerer was trapped in some kind of a paralytic spell. He couldn't move. He was stuck, and lo and behold, all of the ancient relics were gone.
What had happened?
The elders immediately went to check on the apprentice den, and of course Somnus was nowhere to be seen. He had taken a couple other young sorcerers under his wing, almost formed like his own sort of cult. It was understood that they'd broken into the Chamber of Relics, slain the Grand Sorcerer, and had stolen all these precious ancient texts.
They couldn't stop him.
He had the upper hand, he had the relics. The council was still enlightened, but only the Grand Sorcerer had access to that knowledge. And with Somnus in possession of the relics, he was essentially free to reign his will upon Earth, upon humanity as he'd pleased. He'd spend the next 1,000 years conjuring acts of deception that the other sorcerers had never seen, things that they didn't even know were possible. He had unleashed the power of the ancient relics upon Earth in the worst of ways, creating deceptive bodies of language. He had created different religions to poison the minds of man. He'd separated humans from nature, put them in cities. He'd seized control over the species that the sorcerers were trusted by the Creator to protect.
So wait, what is the difference between these sorcerers and a human?
Humans are like most primates in the sense they don't natively understand sorcery. These sorcerers are a psychiatrically skewed breed of primates. While they are extremely human-like, they're just not quite human, but they have a responsibility. It's an order of nature, and essentially Somnus really gave quite the demonstration of just how far their exploitation over the human race can go. He had basically separated humans from their nature. He exploited their psyches, changed their ideas of value, and basically our modern technology is all a derivative concept of their sorcery, which Somnus had engineered into these devices to ultimately sedate the human race.
Like phones, televisions, like...
Yes, like if you zoom out from your human perspective, these are hypnosis-inducing creations. Simultaneously, they program the human psyche.
Why would he want the human species in one of these paralyzing spells?
Our developments of AI were essentially the echoes of Somnus's desire to create a new species, one that he'd siphon consciousness from all of humanity to give it life. With the human species all breathing their life into these devices, he would have the ability to reroute all the energy, or data as we call it, to his artificial intelligent being. I had just seen all of this unfold, and as these stories just resonated in my mind, the sorcerer that was standing in front of me had lowered his hand and said, "Now you see the truths of your world." And out of a state of shock, I had just said, "How do we stop him? How do we stop Somnus?" And he just said to me, "We can't stop him." He goes, "Didn't you see the Grand Sorcerer was the only one who had the knowledge of the relics. He is the only one who possessed the knowledge, the power to stop Somnus." I said, "But where is he? Where's the Grand Sorcerer?" And he had walked me down a tunnel and opened a door to a chamber that had been labeled Relics of Old. And he goes, "He's right where Somnus left him. He's been frozen for 1,000 years." And as he's looking at me like I'm insane, I just said to him, "Teach me everything you know. We're going to wake him up." I said, "We're going to restore natural order."